Before we can read or write any data, we first need to find the file on our computer. In Java, we use the file class for this. Think of the file class like a pointer or a label. It tells Java where a file is located on your hard drive, how big it is, and whether or not it even exists at that path. It is a way of representing a file or directory in your program without actually opening or touching the contents. It is very important to remember that the file class itself cannot see what is inside the file. It is like looking at a closed book. You can see the title, you can see how many pages it has, and you can see which shelf it is on, but you cannot read the sentences inside until you open it. The file class gives you information about the file from the outside, but it does not give you access to the data within. We use the file class to perform file management tasks. You can use it to check whether a file exists at a given path before trying to open it. You can use it to create a brand new empty file on disk. You can use it to check whether a path points to a file or a directory. You can check the size of the file, its name, its full path, and whether it is readable or writable. These are all metadata operations that happen without ever opening or reading the actual content of the file. For reading and writing the actual data inside a file, we need different tools which we will look at next. Let us walk through this code step by step. We have one class called FileCheck, and inside the main method we are using the file class to locate and inspect a file on disk without opening or reading its contents. The first thing we do is create a file object called f and pass the path example.txt into the constructor. This single line does not open the file, does not read anything from it, and does not even check whether it exists yet. It simply creates a file object that points to that path on the file system. Think of it as creating a label that says look at this location. Then we call f.exists. This method actually goes to the file system and checks whether a file or directory exists at the path we specified. It returns true if something exists there and false if nothing is found at that path. If the file exists, we call two methods to get information about it. The first is f.getName, which returns just the name of the file without the full path, which in this case is example.txt. The second is f.getAbsolutePath, which returns the complete full path from the root of the file system all the way to the file. This tells you exactly where on the hard drive the file is located. If the file does not exist, the else block runs and prints file not found. The output when the file exists shows the file name as example.txt and the full absolute path showing exactly where it sits on the system. The important thing to understand about this entire example is that at no point did we open the file or read any data from inside it. We only use the file class to inspect the file from the outside, checking its existence, its name, and its location. This is exactly what the file class is designed for. It is a management and inspection tool, not a reading or writing tool. Java categorizes all data flow into two main types, byte streams and character streams. Think of a stream like a pipe where data flows from one place to another. One end of the pipe is the source where data comes from, and the other end is the destination where data goes to. Java provides different types of pipes depending on what kind of data you are moving. A byte stream is like a heavy-duty pipe. It moves raw binary data, which is just ones and zeros. This is perfect for complex files like photos, music, videos, or any file where the data is not meant to be read as human language. Byte streams do not try to interpret the data in any way. They simply transport the raw bytes from one place to another exactly as they are. The main classes in this category always end with the words input stream or output stream, such as file input stream and file output stream. A character stream is a specialized pipe built specifically for text. Since Java uses Unicode internally, which is a system that represents letters, symbols, and characters from every language in the world, character streams are designed to handle text data correctly and safely. They understand how to convert between raw bytes and characters using the appropriate encoding so that letters from any language are never scrambled or lost during the process. These classes always end with the words reader or writer, such as file reader and file writer. The rule for choosing between them is straightforward. If you are working with a text file like a notepad document or a configuration file, use a character stream because it handles text encoding correctly. If you are working with an image, an audio file, a video, or any non-text binary file, use a byte stream because those files are not text and should be transported as raw bytes without any interpretation. Let us walk through this code step by step. We have one class called copyText, and inside the main method we are using character streams to read the contents of one text file and write them into another text file, effectively copying the text from input to output. The method signature declares throws IOException because working with files is a checked exception scenario. The file might not exist, the disk might be full, or any number of external problems could occur. By declaring throws IOException, we are passing the responsibility of handling that exception up to whoever calls this method. The first thing we do is create a file reader object called fr and point it at a file called input.txt. File reader is a character stream designed specifically for reading text files. It handles character encoding automatically so the text is read correctly regardless of which language it contains. Then we create a file writer object called fw and point it at a file called output.txt. File writer is a character stream designed for writing text to a file. If output.txt does not exist, Java will create it automatically. If it already exists, Java will overwrite its contents. We declare an integer variable called data to hold the value returned by each read call. Then we enter a while loop. On each iteration we call fr.read, which reads one character at a time from the input file and returns it as an integer value. The reason it returns an integer and not a character is so that it can return the special value -1 when it reaches the end of the file. -1 cannot be confused with any valid character value, so it serves as a clear signal that there is no more data to read. The loop condition checks whether the value returned is -1 and keeps running as long as it is not. Inside the loop we call fw.write and pass the data value into it. This writes the character to the output file. One character is read and one character is written on each iteration until the entire input file has been processed. After the loop finishes, we call fr.close to close the file reader and fw.close to close the file writer. Closing streams is critical. Closing the file writer ensures that any data still sitting in a buffer is flushed and actually written to the file on disk. Not closing streams can result in data loss or resource leaks where the file remains locked and inaccessible to other programs. This example demonstrates the fundamental pattern of all stream-based file operations in Java. Open the stream, process the data in a loop until the end is reached, and always close the stream when finished. Reading and writing data directly from a hard drive is very slow. Every time your program asks for a single character or a single byte, the computer has to physically go to the hard drive, locate the data, and bring it back. Imagine if you wanted to move a pile of bricks but you could only carry one brick at a time. You would be making hundreds of trips back and forth and it would take all day even though the total amount of data being moved is not that large. Buffered streams solve this problem by introducing a middle layer between your program and the hard drive. Think of it like giving you a wheelbarrow. Instead of going back and forth to the hard drive for every single character, Java first fills up a large area of memory called a buffer. The buffer collects many characters or bytes together. Once the buffer is full, Java moves all of that data in one single trip to or from the hard drive. This significantly reduces the number of times the computer has to communicate with the hard drive and makes your program run dramatically faster with very little extra effort on your part. You create a buffered stream by wrapping it around an existing stream. For example, you wrap a buffered reader around a file reader. The file reader still does the actual file reading, but the buffered reader sits in between and manages the buffering automatically. For text files, buffered reader is especially popular because it offers a very convenient method called readline. Instead of reading one character at a time, you can call readline and get back an entire line of text as a single string. This makes reading text files line by line extremely clean and simple. When there are no more lines to read, readline returns null, which makes it easy to write a loop that processes every line in a file. Let us walk through this code step by step. We have one class called readlines, and inside the main method we are using a buffered reader to read a text file efficiently, one complete line at a time. The method signature declares throws IOException because file operations involve external resources that can fail for reasons outside the program's control. The first thing we do is create a file reader pointing at a file called test.txt. The file reader on its own can read the file, but it does so one character at a time with no buffering. To make it efficient, we immediately wrap it inside a buffered reader. This is the standard pattern for buffered file reading in Java. The buffered reader sits on top of the file reader and adds a memory buffer between the file and your program. Instead of going to the hard drive for every single character, Java fills the buffer with a large chunk of data at once and your program reads from that buffer. This dramatically reduces the number of hard drive accesses and makes the reading process much faster. We declare a string variable called line to hold the text returned by each readline call. Then we enter a while loop. On each iteration we call br.readline, which reads all the characters up to the next line break and returns them together as a single string. This is far more convenient than reading character by character because you get a complete line of text with one method call. The loop condition checks whether the returned string is null. When readline reaches the end of the file and there are no more lines to read, it returns null instead of a string. As long as the return value is not null, the loop continues. Inside the loop, we simply print the line using println. Each line from the file is printed to the console on its own line. After the loop finishes, we call br.close to close the buffered reader. Closing the buffered reader also closes the underlying file reader automatically. This releases the file handle and ensures any remaining buffered data is properly handled. Always closing streams after you are done with them is a critical habit in Java file programming. This example shows the most common and practical pattern for reading text files in Java. Wrap a file reader in a buffered reader, read line by line in a loop until null is returned, and close the stream when finished. Normally, when your Java program closes, all your objects in memory vanish completely. The data they held disappears because it only ever existed in RAM, which is temporary storage. But what if you want to save a player's progress in a game so they can continue where they left off? Or what if you need to send a complete object over a network connection to another computer? You need a way to convert the object into a format that can be stored or transmitted and then reconstructed later exactly as it was. This is where serialization comes in. Serialization is like freeze-drying an object. It takes all the data inside an object, all its fields and their current values, and converts everything into a flat stream of bytes. That stream of bytes can then be written into a file on disk, sent over a network, or stored in a database. The object no longer exists as a living thing in memory, but all of its information has been preserved in a portable format. Deserialization is the exact opposite process. It takes that flat stream of bytes, whether from a file or a network or anywhere else, and reconstructs the original object in memory exactly as it was at the time it was serialized. All the fields get their values restored and you end up with a fully working object again, as if it had never been converted to bytes at all. For this to work, your class must implement the serializable interface. Think of this as giving Java a permission slip that says this class is safe to serialize. The serializable interface has no methods to implement. Simply writing implements serializable is enough. If you try to serialize an object whose class does not implement serializable, Java will throw a not serializable exception and refuse to proceed. This requirement exists as a deliberate safety mechanism to ensure that only classes that are explicitly designed and intended to be serialized can be converted to bytes. Let us walk through this code step by step. We have two classes here: Student and Serialized Demo. The student class is the object we want to save to a file, and Serialized Demo contains the main method where the serialization actually happens. Starting with the student class. It has two fields, a string called name and an int called id. The most important thing about this class is that it implements serializable. This single declaration is the permission slip that tells Java this class is allowed to be serialized. Without it, any attempt to serialize a student object would result in an exception and the operation would fail completely. The serializable interface has no methods to implement. Simply declaring it is enough. Now let us look at the main method inside Serialized Demo. We create a student object called ed_s1 and assign values to its fields. We set name to John and ID to 101. At this point, s1 is a regular Java object living in memory with those two values. Then we create an object output stream called out. Object output stream is a high-level stream specifically designed to handle complete Java objects. We wrap it around a file output stream that points to a file called student.sir. The .sir extension is a common convention for serialized Java object files, though any extension would work. The file output stream handles the actual writing of bytes to the file on disk, and the object output stream sits on top of it, converting the object into bytes automatically. Then we call out .write object and pass s1 into it. This is where serialization actually happens. Java takes the student object, reads all its field values, converts the entire object including its class information and field data into a stream of bytes, and writes those bytes into the student.sir file through the chain of streams we set up. After this call, the complete state of the s1 object exists as bytes on disk. Then we call out .close to close the stream. This is essential because closing the object output stream flushes any remaining bytes and properly finalizes the file. After the close call, we print object save to file to confirm that the operation completed successfully. The file student.sir now contains a binary representation of the student object with name John and ID 101. This file can be read back later using an object input stream to reconstruct the exact same student object in memory, which is the deserialization process. Sometimes an object has information that is too sensitive or too temporary to save to a file. For example, you might have a user object that contains a name and a password. You want to save the name so it can be restored later, but for security reasons you should never write a password into a file where it could potentially be read by anyone who gains access to that file. You need a way to tell Java which fields to include in serialization and which fields to skip entirely. By marking a field with the keyword transient, you are giving Java a clear instruction to skip that field during serialization. When Java is converting the object into a stream of bytes, it will simply ignore any field marked as transient and not include it in the output. The field exists normally in memory while the program is running, but it is never written to the file. When you bring the object back to life later through deserialization, any field that was marked as transient will not have a value in the saved data. Java will restore that field to its default value instead. For a string field, the default is null. For an int field, the default is 0. For a Boolean field, the default is false. The object is reconstructed, but the transient fields come back empty rather than with their original values. This makes the transient keyword a vital tool in real-world Java development. It gives you precise control over exactly which data gets persisted and which data stays private. Sensitive information like passwords, authentication tokens, and encryption keys should always be marked as transient. Temporary values that are calculated at runtime and do not need to be saved, like cached results or connection objects, should also be marked as transient. Using transient correctly keeps your serialized data both secure and lightweight. Let us walk through this code step by step. We have two classes here: user and transient test. The user class represents a user account with two fields, and the transient test class demonstrates how the transient keyword affects serialization. Starting with the user class. It has two string fields. The first is username, which is a regular field with no special modifiers. The second is password, which is marked with the transient keyword. This single keyword makes all the difference. During serialization, Java will include username in the saved data but will completely ignore password and leave it out of the file entirely. The constructor takes two parameters, U for username and P for password, and assigns them to the respective fields using this .username and this .password. When a user object is created, both fields hold their values normally in memory. The transient keyword has no effect while the program is running. It only matters when the object is being serialized. Now let us look at the main method inside transient test. We create a user object called U and pass admin as the username and secret123 as the password. At this point, both fields are populated and working normally in memory. When this object is serialized and written to a file, Java goes through each field and decides what to include. It finds username and includes it in the serialized output. Then it finds password and sees the transient keyword. It skips password entirely. The value secret123 is never written to the file. When this object is later deserialized and read back from the file, Java reconstructs the user object. It finds the saved value for username and restores it to admin. But password was never saved, so Java has no value to restore. It sets password to its default value for a string which is null. So after deserialization, printing username gives you admin exactly as it was before. But printing password gives you null because the value was intentionally discarded during serialization. This behavior is exactly what you want for sensitive data. The password existed in memory while the program was running, but it was never written to disk where it could be accessed by someone reading the file directly. The transient keyword is a simple but powerful security tool that every Java developer working with serialization should use for any field that should not be persisted. Thank you for watching this video. I hope this explanation helped you clearly understand the file handling and input-output and its core components in a structured and easy way. Continue learning, keep practicing, and stay consistent with your preparation. More detailed concepts are coming next.